presentation, we are looking at how to achieve academic success. What does it take for you to succeed in your studies? Before I get into the presentation, just briefly about myself. Welcome to our today's presentation. I greet you in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. In today's presentation, we are looking at how to achieve academic success. What does it take for you to succeed in your studies? Before I get into the presentation, just briefly about myself. I'm a chemical engineer from Copperbelt University. I have a degree in chemical engineering. So what I'm going to share with you is based on what I learned as a student, and I've continued learning as well even up to this time. So without further ado, let's get into our main discussion. God bless you. Welcome. Today we are looking at how to achieve academic success. This is Brother Mark, and I'll be able to share with you tips that will help you to improve your performance in your studies. In this presentation, I'll be able to share with you what it takes to learn, the factors that are needed for you to succeed, and most importantly, why you should achieve academic success. What is the benefit of achieving academic success? It's very, very important as students, especially as Christian students, that we achieve academic success. To start with, we need to get the basics right. We need to understand certain terms. The first one is intelligence. What is intelligence? This is a common term which most of us know what intelligence is. We actually aspire to be intelligent, all of us, and we understand it, but explaining it is quite difficult. For the sake of this presentation, intelligence is simply the ability to learn, the ability to learn. In other words, your ability to acquire knowledge and being able to apply that knowledge. That is basically intelligence. Then the next term that we need to understand is learning itself. What is learning? When it comes to learning, this is the process of acquiring the knowledge, understanding the knowledge, and being able to apply that knowledge. This is very, very important to understand. Once we know what learning is, then we'll be able to assess ourselves and know whether we are achieving academic success or not. The last term that I want us to also understand is memory, as well as forgetting. What is memory? Memory is simply storage. So when the knowledge or information is getting into your mind, that is memory. And we have two types of memories: short-term and long-term memory. Then forgetting is failure to recall the information, or when there is that memory loss. In other words, when you are failing to retrieve the information that you have stored in your memory. So basically, memory is on the input side, getting the information into your brain or your mind. Then forgetting is on the output side, getting that information from your memory. So if you are failing, and there are certain factors that affect, which I'll be able to shed more light as we go, which contribute to forgetfulness. So those terms are very crucial for this presentation, so that we put things in context. You need to know what intelligence is, the ability to acquire knowledge, or the ability to learn. Then learning itself, the process of acquiring knowledge, and analyzing it or understanding it, and being able to apply it. Then lastly, memory is storage of information. Forgetting is failure to retrieve the stored information. So these terms are very important for us to understand. Now let's get into the main discussion. The first stage is what it takes to learn, what it takes for you to achieve academic success. What are the factors that need to be in place for you to make learning exciting, simpler, and interesting? There are basically three that I want to highlight. The first one is that you need motivation. You need to be excited about learning. You need to be desiring learning. Most students are actually discouraged. They are in school as if they are being forced to be in school. This shouldn't be the case. You need to be excited. You need to be very happy about your course, about what you are learning. Oftentimes I meet students and they complain, especially about mathematics. And whenever a student complains to me that mathematics is very difficult, I simply ask them simple questions. The first one is 1 + 1. And almost everyone, no one has ever failed that question. They tell me 1 + 1 is equal to 2. Then I ask 10 + 10. They tell me 20. What about 6 - 3? They tell me it's a 3. Then I follow up with a question, but you told me that mathematics is difficult for you, yet you have gotten 100% from the questions I've asked you. What I try to remind them with that kind of questions is that it's not the entire mathematics that is difficult. There are certain parts of mathematics that might be challenging to you, but don't group everything to be challenging. That kind of attitude will affect you. Even simpler parts of mathematics will be difficult because you consider the entire subject to be very difficult. So motivation is very, very important. You need to be interested in what you are learning. Then the second factor is you need concentration. Concentration is crucial. You need to focus. You need to specifically focus on what you are learning. Avoid distractions. This is extremely important. If you're not paying attention, then learning will not take place. Even storage of that information will also not take place, which will actually ultimately affect your application of that knowledge. So it's very, very important that you learn to concentrate, you learn to pay attention whenever you are learning, whenever you are revising, whenever you are studying or in a group discussion. Always be involved 100%. Avoid any form of distraction. Then the last factor is you need proper organization. You need to be well organized, how you are acquiring the information or how you are getting information into your brain, and how you are storing that information in your brain. It has to be well organized, and this will make it easier as you retrieve the information. But once you become disorganized in your brain, then even your retrieving of information will be extremely difficult. In the end, you may even consider yourself to be dull, but no one is dull. All of us are intelligent. It's only the intelligence levels that differ from person to person. So remember, you need motivation, concentration, and organization. Organize your information, organize your notes, organize yourself. It's very, very important. Then the next stage in in achieving academic success is that you need to follow certain steps. There are certain steps that you need to follow for you to achieve academic success. The first stage, and this is basically the process of learning, the stages that are involved in learning. So the first one is acquisition. acquiring of knowledge. If you are missing classes, it means you are not acquiring the knowledge, because lectures or lessons, when the lecturer is teaching, that's one method of acquiring the information. This is on the input side of the learning process. The next stage in achieving academic success is understanding the steps in learning, or the steps of learning. What are the steps involved in learning? This is very important as well. So when it comes to learning, there are basically 3 steps. And these are the steps that even the computer uses. I'm sure you agree with me that a computer is considered to be a very intelligent machine. It's able to make calculations, to solve mathematics that even a human brain might struggle to solve. A computer is able to store so much information, and being able to retrieve that information within seconds. So we can learn something from the computer, how the computer works, and if we follow the same pattern, it will also help us with our learning process. So when it comes to the computer, it has the input, the process, then the output side, or the process or the processor. So the input side, the computer gets information from outside. It could be through typing, you type something, or using a microphone, you are speaking or singing. The computer will get that information into its processor. Then the processor, which does the process, it combines the information, or analyzes that information, breaks it down, combines it in order to give the output which is required. And this is exactly the learning process that even us human beings follow. So the first step is acquisition. The acquisition, in other words, getting the information inside your brain. And how do you do this? There are several methods. One of them is attending lectures. When the lecturer is teaching you, that's one way of getting the information into your brain. Another one is studying on your own. You get a book or online, being able to read or study on your own. Then we also have watching. It could be watching a movie. It's also another way of getting the information into your brain. Basically, the 5 senses which we have as human beings, we get information into our brain through sight, through smell, through feelings, and also through taste. You are able to get certain information which will give the brain to work on. Then the next step is process, which is basically interpretation. The information that you have gotten into your mind, you need to be able to analyze it, to break it down, to combine it, so that you are able to see what the passage is talking about, or what the teacher or lecturer is talking about. This is very, very important. The understanding, if you fail to interpret correctly, then even application will be very difficult for you. So the third step is output. So the output, this is where you now try to solve the problems, or being able to teach another person, or being able to answer questions and tests as well as exams. So these are on the output side. So you have the input, the process, and the output. And you need all these stages of these steps to be very effective in order for you to achieve academic success. It's very, very important for you to bear that in mind. The next stage in how to achieve academic success, you need to understand the process of learning, or the steps involved in learning. We have a computer which is considered to be a very intelligent machine, the computer is able to get information into it and being able to process that information and give the output. The computer is able to store large quantities of information and being able to recall within seconds. So when we look at the computer, we can learn something. Even as human beings follow the same specific steps, the input, process, and output. So when it comes to us, on the input side, this is the first step, which is acquisition of knowledge. How do you get the information into your mind? Most of us are so hard on ourselves and we try to recall what we didn't even learn in the first place. So how do you acquire knowledge? How do you get knowledge or information into your brain? There are several methods. One of them is attending lectures. So during the lessons or the lectures, as the lecturer is explaining, you are getting that information into your mind. So missing classes is something that you should avoid. You should always attend lectures so that you are able to benefit by getting the information as the lecturer is teaching. Then the next method is through studying on your own, getting a book and being able to read, to study. That is also another way of getting the information into your brain. Another way of getting information into your brain is through group discussions. You being part of the group discussion with fellow students, asking questions, participating. That way you are getting the information into your brain. You are giving the brain what it should work on, the information that it should store, and the information that it should be able to process. Then the other way of getting information into your brain is through watching. It could be watching on YouTube or a video of a particular subject, and you'll be able to get information into your brain through that method. So there are a lot of methods, and you as a student should take time on how you can optimize on those methods and being able to get quality information into your brain. They say garbage in, garbage out, and you cannot recall what you didn't put in your mind in the first place. So you need to ensure that the acquisition stage is effective. You are attending lectures, you are studying, you are revising. This is extremely important. Where you're not clear, seek help, ask your colleagues, ask the lecturers, do your own research. All those are methods of getting the information into your brain, and that is the first crucial step when it comes to the learning process. The second step is the processing itself, which is basically understanding or interpreting the information that you've gathered. So mostly a number of students, this is the part which is actually difficult for them. They resort to memorizing. They just want to repeat the exact information in the way it was presented to them. It shouldn't be like that. As I will explain later, you will see how easy it is for you to actually learn. What you need to know is that the interpretation stage, at this stage, you are breaking down the information, trying to make several different associations. The more associations you make, the easier it is for you to understand, and the easier it is for you to recall that information. So the process stage, you are trying to understand what does it mean? What does the information I have mean? So you are seeking to get the meaning behind what you are studying or what you heard the lecturer teach you. So the interpretation stage is extremely crucial. Failure to being able to understand, then it will be difficult for you even to apply it. In other words, it will be difficult for you to achieve academic success. Then the last stage in the learning process is the output. So the output, this is where you are now applying the information or the knowledge that you have processed. So application comes in many ways as well. One of them is being able to answer questions, tests and exams. That way you are now applying what you have learned, what you acquired, processed. Now you are responding or applying that knowledge, and this is also extremely important. Then the other way of applying that information is when you are able to teach another person. This is why the experts say you need to be able to teach others, so that as you are explaining to others, you are actually making yourself understand the material even better. So those are some of the methods in which you apply the information, being able to recite to yourself, trying to repeat what you learned. All that is meant to reinforce the information that you have. So you need to go through all these 3 stages for the learning to take place. If you only attended lectures, you have only you need to take time on your own, think through, ask yourself questions about this material that you have gotten. That is called processing or interpreting. Don't be lazy on any of these stages. Then lastly, you need to apply. So don't wait for the exam for you to test whether you have understood or not. Take time to ask yourself questions, look for past papers, go through, give yourself the same duration that the exam requires, and respond to the questions. Set the same environment of an exam. Be quiet and follow through. Put a timer for you to follow through and stick to it. All these are important for you to train and condition yourself so that it becomes part and parcel. When it comes to exams, the real exam, you simply follow through because you have been practicing all the 3 steps effectively. The next step in achieving academic success is learning. The next step in achieving academic success is you need to understand how to learn. How do I make the learning process easier? You might be wondering and asking yourself, yes, I've understood these 3 steps of learning, but how do I learn? How do I make learning exciting? I want to highlight just 3 ways in which you learn. So the first one is elaboration learning. This type of learning, this is where once you get the material, you try to elaborate. In other words, you want to tell a story of what you are learning in your own words. So the more you tell the story in your own way, the way you understand it, the better. So in this method, you are trying to overlearn or relearning over and over or the same material, going through trying to say it in different ways. That one is called elaboration learning, and this will help you to understand the material which you are learning. The next the other method is chunk learning. So this chunk learning, this is where you get the information in 2 chunks. For example, if you want to remember or to master a cell phone number, instead of going a single digit and all the digits one by one, you may decide to group them in 233, 0975, 255, 770. That way it becomes easier for you to even recall or to store that information. So you need to learn to chop the information in 2 chunks that your memory or your brain can handle. This is extremely important. Learn to break information and make the connections that your brain can handle. Then the other method is called principle learning. So for this type of learning, this is where you are looking at the principle. Once you read the material, instead of memorizing each and every sentence, you are looking at what is the message or what is the key lesson in this passage. You have read the entire chapter, then you pause and ask yourself, so what is a single lesson that I've picked from this? Once you get that principle, you'll be able to explain it in your own words, and the lecturer will be able to give you marks. So it's very, very important to practice these types of learning, elaboration, get as much as the information as possible, keep on going on over and over and say it in your own words, tell a story, make connections in your own way. Then the other one is chunk learning, break down the information into ways and methods that your brain can handle. Then lastly, it's principle learning, where you look for the principle behind everything that you are learning. So this is the presentation that I had for you, which we just to encourage you to give academic success. So before we close, one more last point is, why should you even learn? Why should you even bother? Is it important for you as a believer to actually go through all these processes and just strive for academic success? And the answer is a big yes. You need to achieve academic success as a believer. And there are many reasons for this. When you look at the Bible, the main Bible characters who are considered to be educated had even a larger impact. This is not to despise people who were of humble learning in the Bible. We have seen that even people like Peter, people said, made comments about them to say these people are not even learned, but they were able to do great things for the Lord. So it's not necessarily education, but what education will do is that it will actually enable you to do more for the Lord. It will give you extra abilities for you to serve the Lord. So it's very important when you look at the characters who are considered to be educated in the Bible and the impact they made for God and in their society, you agree with me that indeed education is important. The one character is Moses. The Bible tells us that Moses was educated in the knowledge and the wisdom of Egypt. He was able to do so much. Then the other person is Daniel. We all know that Daniel was an intellectual. He spent 3 years in learning the knowledge of Babylon, and we all know the impact that he had in that nation. We also think of the Apostle Paul. He was also considered to be educated, and he did so much. He wrote a lot of books in the Bible. So this should serve as a motivation, as an encouragement to all of us as Christian students to actually do even more. So why should you bother learning or achieving academic success? The first reason is that learning or education will actually develop you. So the first reason is to develop yourself. By acquiring more information, you actually get to develop yourself even more, develop your skills, develop your talents, the gifts that the Lord has given you, and this is important. The more educated you are, the better it will be for you to develop those talents and put them to good use. The second reason is that education will make you useful to your family, useful to society, useful to the church, and useful to ZAFES as well, the Christian movement. So it's very, very important that we realize that as we are learning to be useful. Do not limit your goal for education to just acquiring a job or having a business. There are so many ways in which you will be able to apply the education that you are acquiring. Some of you, the Lord will take you in different paths away from the career that you are actually pursuing, but the same information that you are acquiring, the same process that you are going through will actually help you to develop and being able to make impact in society. You need to make a difference in society. This is very important for you and for the future generation, and even for the body of Christ. Lastly, the reason why you should aim for academic success is that it glorifies God. God is not illiterate. God knows how to read and write. God has a sharp memory. He never forgets. And these are some of the qualities that He expects even us to have, to be able to be knowledgeable just like He is. Of course, we cannot match His level. My point is that we need to be people that are acquiring knowledge. For God to give you that career, He has a use for it. So do not despise your career. Pay attention. Remember, with the same information that you are glorifying, the same education that you are acquiring, you'll be able to glorify God. Our God wants you to be educated and being able to use that knowledge that you are acquiring in making impact in the kingdom of God. This is very important. So those are the three reasons why you should aim for academic success: to develop yourself, to be useful in society, and being able to glorify God. So basically, this is what we had for you for today. To sum it up, we have seen that there are basically certain steps, certain factors that you need to put in place in order for you to achieve academic success. Academic success, or succeeding in your studies, is very easy. It's something that you can achieve by following what we have discussed. Ensure that the factors that I mentioned are in place. Be motivated, the motivation, the organization, and also being able to concentrate, or concentration. Then we need to follow the stages that I highlighted on the input, acquiring of knowledge, the processing, interpretation of the knowledge, and application, which is the output. We need to follow those steps and ensure that each step is effective. There are details that you need to research on how you can improve on each stage.